Hello and welcome to the Ireland on the Fly podcast about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland. This week I'm delighted to bring you our first episode from the riverbank. Only a few days ago I was lucky enough to fish the Slaney River for the first time on the Ballycarney Fishery beats in the company of the fishery manager Peter Wadding. Spring salmon fishing on the Slaney has been on my bucket list for a while and I was thrilled to be able to fish it this year. But I travelled in hope rather than expectation. However, as you'll hear, things couldn't have turned out better. And Tom, I'm sure you don't want to hear about any of that.
Sorry, did things turn out better? God, what would that entail, Daire?
Let me paint the picture for you.
Yeah, I came back. I got a WhatsApp there during the week, and put it this way: the springer was nice. Springer was big, but not half as big as the smile on Daire's face. Fair play to you.
I tell you. So as I said, got the invite from Peter. Was in the diary. Again, wasn't. I don't know. Do days ever suit these days? I don't know. With life and kids were sick, I was sick. The weather was crap. I was like, all right, but I booked it in. So if I was on my own, I probably would.
And with your record, I would have been expecting a flood of biblical proportions roaring.
There was rain coming. Thankfully, it wasn't biblical. But so we were hoping. I knew, but because then I was like, with the way the sun was and it was shining, and I was like, oh man. But anyway, it was a few showers coming in. So I thought, it might stir things up. So met Peter. And took me down to the river, lovely little river, and you'll hear I describe. So we did a couple of short little kind of interviews beside the riverbank before we went fishing, and then literally about a minute after we'd caught and released the fish, I literally so yourself, spring salmon this day and age are just like, it's almost like steelhead fishing these days, I think, in terms of,
well, to use the great Irish saying, which a lot of people who aren't Irish really don't understand, you must have got one hell of a land when you hooked him.
But it was right. So it was really, so we're literally, I'd say 10 minutes in, I'd say we'd probably gone about 50.
Are you serious?
Literally 10 minutes in, right? So initially, Peter,
come on, what are you doing? You're meant to suffer for the whole day.
That's what I'm saying. I'm still in shock. And even then, because Peter was like, can you make it for 7 a.m? Because and again, Peter explains, one of the theories is kind of get in around high tide. And the theory is that the fish have been pushed on, And I was like, 7, I'm on the road at 5, I'm up at 4:30, that ain't happening. I said, Peter, I'm not one of these. I don't flog the water. I'm like, I'll fish for an hour, sit down, have a cup of tea, might get back to the water for another hour. I said, I'm a very kind of relaxed kind of about it. I said, I ain't hitting the road at 5. Sorry about that. And, the chances even of fish, but he said, all right, get here whenever you can. So I got there for 9. And so he was explaining the run, and looked lovely little kind of stretch, lovely flow to it, kind of low water, but there was a few kind of pots and pockets where it could be holding. So I was like, yeah, spring salmon, Slaney, good luck, nice to be out anyway, like. And I was asking him more about Kingsmill Moor and, days gone by. So we're literally 10 minutes in. I'd probably walked about 50 feet. Literally. And he was like, oh, there's rocks just down here is a good spot, like, and I was like, yeah. So anyway, tell us another story there about the Slaney. Next minute just zip, 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 zip. I was like, because initially it was like the pluck of it, it felt like almost like a trout kind of pluck, just a very gentle, and then it was like, oh hello. Oh hello. I couldn't believe it. Took us.
Oh wow!
And it was jumping, splashing, and now you
jump, a
couple of times. He reckons it was probably in the river about a week. So not sea lice, but it was Jesus. He wasn't coming
really fresh in the picture.
Beautiful fish, like 9.5 pounds, and he was going and going, and I was literally like, just you're just like, is this really happening? So landed him, couldn't believe it. So that was it. I was like, I'm done.
What a perfect way to tick off a bucket list.
Oh, literally, like
seriously,
literally, like, because we rested the pool, we landed it, and it was about 15-20 minutes to get it in, and we rested the pool. So we're sitting there chatting and did another interview, and I was like, I literally was like, yeah, I'm done. I couldn't be bothered. Like,
well, like. No, did you? No, seriously, now, because I'm going to ask you. Were you actually thinking I could get 2?
No. See, I'm not greedy like that, Tom. I wasn't even expecting 1.
Yeah.
So I don't push my luck. Like, no, we did go back down. We went back down the run, and no, it's funny. My heart kind of wasn't in. I was like, no, I've done it now. I've cut the springer. I'm happy. Like, you know. And
tell us more about Kingsman Moor.
Come literally 10 minutes in, 50
so
feet
come here.
in.
What did he take?
It was okay. So it was kind of a black fly. So Peter's called. It's like the Hauger fly, is it? It's like an Icelandic. I couldn't say it, Hugger fly, but he kind of had a twist on it. So he said to me he hadn't got a name for it. And so we were all day, like, we were trying to think of different names, because I wanted something like with podcast in it, or pod, or I was like, it just wasn't more happening. So then he was like, what about
podcast?
The podcast? Yeah, no, he wanted something with Slaney in it then as well. So then it was like, well, what about Whelan's Wish? And I was like, oh, that's way too narcissistic, that one. Like, but I was like, well, what about Slaney Wish?
We'll just take the wish bit out.
Yeah, just leave it Whelan's Magic or something. No, but no, I said, so what about the Slaney Wish? So that's the fly now, Slaney Wish. There you go. Wish in more ways than one, I have to say.
And what was it? Was it big? What size 8? Size 10? What size?
Oh, I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, on this. I think it was like a size 10. Wasn't, you know,
size 10, yeah.
Around the size double, size 10 double. Just it was the other funny thing was I had put the wrong line and reel setup on it. Right, I was in a rush, so I grabbed the wrong one. So it was just a really light setup. So the line was going like crap. Right, it was almost like a trout setup. It was just, but then we were chatting afterwards, going, I wonder actually did that because it was so light. And just kind of just through the low water, just kind of maybe just fluttered down, and that was the bang, you know. So that's my theory on it anyway. Or else I was just in the right place at the right time.
Well, I think that probably played quite a large part. But still, you don't know.
Well, I have to say, Peter, thank you very much, because he said, come to this beat, let's get there, you know, around high tide, those rocks, you know. Try that one. So it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So
that's you off the mark for this year.
But this is it. I'm hanging up the rod now. I'm done. That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
All done. But
was that your? Did you say you went out on the Blackwater one day? Did you?
I was out in the Blackwater 2 weeks ago. So that was only my second time out. But it was just to be on the Slaney. I love going to rivers like that where you know the history of them. You know, it was just spring salmon fishing on the Slaney. Just brilliant. Yeah. Just wanted to be there.
Historically, it was the spring salmon water in Ireland.
It was, and that's it. Like Kingsman Moore had his house there, and then there was the flood, and he stopped going, and then obviously it was the place, and then it declined, and it's still struggling, and it's been open again, and there's not many fish, and then it's just I love just driving along. Just following the stream of it, and it's just I don't know. I love the history of the places.
I mean, it's fantastic. We're both like that. We're both like the history things. I mean, like to get to fish it, just with the historical side was fantastic. But then to actually fresh spring, it's kind of, whoa, did you play the lotto when you were talking or something?
But it's almost like, those beginners that just, you hear them and then the first cast they catch a salmon, and then the second cast they cast a salmon, they go, geez, this is too easy, I'm giving it up. Like, it was like, what the hell? See, I wish I could put it down to skill, but I know it's not. So it's like, bloody,
you landed them.
Oh, I tell you.
You landed them.
Yeah, the fight was brilliant. No, so Peter, thanks again. So we'll hear from Peter now in a few minutes. As I said, I brought the microphone. I did a couple of recordings before we went fishing by the riverbank, and then literally a few minutes after the excitement of landing and releasing the fish. And then you'll also hear a bit about the fishery as well, and Peter telling us about it as well. So it was absolutely brilliant. We're hoping to do a few more of these as well, kind of out and about episodes. I think they're well worth, to just give people a sense of that fishing and being out and about and finding out a bit more about the fishery and the history as well. So it's Well worth listening to. But before we do head over to the Slaney River, just some important news from Salmon Watch Ireland, Tom, in relation to the ongoing salmon farm licence applications. So I just want to give people some background. This is from Salmon Watch Ireland update. On the 4th of March 2025, they submitted a FOI Freedom of Information request to the Department of Agriculture seeking essential data on the mortalities, stocking and harvest figures from several of these open net salmon farm licence applications. So obviously they asked, look, what's the mortality rate in these places? Okay, you're looking for a license renewed. Well, tell us what's the mortality rate, what's the disease? It gives them some idea of what it's like. Especially when we hear of such numbers in Norway and Scotland, there's kind of 60-70%, mortality rates in these places. And interestingly enough, the government issued a formal refusal to their FOI request. And they claimed that the data included personal information. They said that the data is commercially sensitive, and that they said that these justifications outweigh the public interest. Salmon Watch Ireland responded then, and they said, well, do you know what? The request that we put in explicitly excluded personal information, that the data we sought relates solely to operational performance and environmental incomes, not proprietary trade secrets, and that the public has a legitimate right to scrutinise aquaculture practices that impact our shared marine environment. So, Salmon Watch Ireland are pursuing a review process and have arranged to initiate formal reconsideration by the senior official. But doesn't it just stink to high heaven?
There's something rotten in the state of Denmark, wasn't that the line? Whatever. Geez, something really. That's just there. That's shocking, actually. Yeah. It really is. There's, very specifically when Salmon Watch Ireland have come back and said, their request did not request any of these things, which was the reason why it was not granted. No, there's something very wrong about all that.
Yeah, it is. It's and as Salmon Watch Ireland, they said the case underscores a broader issue: the lack of transparency in aquaculture regulation. Couldn't have put it better. When data that lack of transparency, yeah, and when data
none.
Yeah, exactly. When data that directly impacts environmental health and public trust is withheld, it undermines public consultation and accountability. We believe that harvest volumes, fish mortalities and stocking levels are not sensitive trade secrets but key indicators of farm performance and ecological risk. Here. So it's so they're awaiting the outcome of this appeal. I won't hold my breath, but thank you to Salmon Watch Ireland for continuing their
and I have to say fair play to them. Yeah. Fair play to them for doing things like this.
Yeah. And if anybody...
And highlighting it out there.
Highlighting.
We're on to somebody, wasn't an angler there recently, they were just going on about, through talking to me and through actually listening to other anglers, they said, I'm kind of been thinking a lot about salmon. I'm less inclined to buy it now. I said, well, we've covered it quite a bit. He said, yeah. He said, it's interesting because I'd always thought I was been really, he didn't use the word green. I can't remember the word he used now, but, sort of like it was presented sort of to me as sort
healthy.
Of eco-friendly, healthy, all of this. And it's the more I become aware of it. But you see, the thing is, the majority of consumers, buy it blindly. And they're not aware of these things,
Listen. We're doing another series of The Last Salmon. Jim Murray is coming out in the summertime. Actually, can I just mention on that, and I'll post about it another time, is we're doing a crowdfunding for The Last Salmon at the moment. So I'll post about that if people can just check it out if they're interested in us raising the awareness of this issue, and Jim using his platform to raise awareness of this issue about the salmon and the plight of the salmon. So do check it out, and if you can help out, that'd be brilliant. But just on that, again, I've mentioned it before, the new fish, read the new fish book in terms of the history and development of the salmon farming industry. We were sold a pup. It was the biggest marketing genius faux ploy in the history of marketing, like that. We were sold that they sold it so much that the Japanese, who never had a history of salmon in their sushi culture, it became associated with the Japanese sushi culture. Like they actually, they rewrote history. It's commonplace now in a sushi dish.
to see salmon.
And yet, 30, 40 years ago, Japanese people never had salmon in their sushi. Like, it was seen as like the dirty, cheap fish. Isn't it mad?
Yep.
Like, so what we were sold. So, look, Salmon Watch Ireland, keep fighting it, please. I suppose all we can do is just keep highlighting it, Tom. Just raise awareness. You know, the lack of transparency. You know, Salmon Watch Ireland has asked for what was the fish mortality, what was the stocking rate, what was that in the fish farms that you want renewed or that you want to reapply for, and the government is saying you're not entitled to that information because it's not in the public interest.
Yeah.
You might see government ministers having photos with farm salmon. Shock horror. That would never happen, would it?
That would never happen, would it? Oh, no.
Oh.
I dread it, yeah.
Right. Anyway, we'll leave that hanging there. We'll keep an eye on it.
Definitely keep an eye on that.
And
watch this space.
Right. Back to happier times and the River Slaney and the chance.
Were you on the Slaney, were you?
The chance of a spring salmon. You never know. Let's hear from Peter Wadding now.
So where we are at the moment, Daire, is we're on the lower part of the River Slaney here. The beat is known as my 80. It's part of one of the fisheries that I run, Ballycarney Fisheries. So it'll be the furthest upriver beat that we have. In fact, the next beat up there, just at that border there, is the Salmon Fishery as well. A very well famous, very well known fishery for some good reasons, for also some not so good reasons as well. There's a famous weir that we can get into talking about later on, or if you've heard about the Slaney, you'll know about the weir in Salmon. But we're not here about that at the moment. We're targeting these spring fish out here. So we've got some nice clear water at the moment. Little touch on the low side, but for spring salmon, I don't mind that as much because I find that the lower water does tend to slow the fish down when they're coming through the system as well, you know?
Yeah. And then I suppose we're saying, like, okay, I know we've had a lot of sunshine and, you know, the temperatures have been high the last kind of few weeks. But today it's overcast. There's rain drizzling, falling down. There's not enough water now to lift the river, but we're hoping it might just stir things up a little bit.
Exactly, a small little bit of fresh water like that doesn't do too much harm. Now, it'll only be a slight trickle if it's anything. But at the same time, as you say, the conditions are nice. I haven't checked into the airflow as much, but look, we're out here, we're going to give it a go anyway, and we'll do our best, as the lad says. There'll be a lot of chopping and changing, but I'd say we'll be casting over a fish or two. Whether they're going to take or not now is the next thing.
Yeah, I did want to ask you that, Peter, is like the runs obviously nowadays, you know, for spring salmon especially, you're just hoping to maybe meet one or two somewhere, isn't it? And that's really the best you can hope for.
Well, that's it. You're going to put in the hours and look what you're looking for a reward at the end of the day. It does take time. It takes a lot of hours. It takes a lot of being here at the correct time as well. Like, as the fishery manager here, I have a few little bits of data. Like, if it took one man in particular, I think it was 20 trips to the Slaney last year before he got so much as one pull. And I don't think he even landed a fish. He lost a few fish in play, all right, but at the same time, you have to put in the hours to be there. Do you know, at the right time when they're coming through. But like I said, there's a few holding up here, I would assume. So we're going to hope for the best anyway.
Yeah, and just before we get in, it's just again, I'm surprised. I was expecting kind of a bigger river. I don't know why. Maybe I'm used to fishing the black water, you know, wider. Width-wise, what would you say here?
With a 12.5 foot, a sort of a longish cast, maybe 3, 4, 5 rod lengths is enough. It's perfectly within casting distance for anyone, whether they're amateur or experienced, you know, you'll cover it fairly well. Even in the lower water, now I don't condone this for salmon fishing, I should say, but a light single-hander for sea trout is absolutely fantastic here. It's a beautiful little stretch for that. But with your springers, I tend to recommend a nice sort of in around the 8 weight, 12.5 foot. Just has that bit of backbone that you're able to give the fish a bit of respect, to have that bit of pull to bring them in. It is a catch and release fishery, so obviously catch and release is essential, single and double barbless hooks, but just having that power to bring them in and let them off with a little bit of energy, you know, that they're not absolutely spent going back out as well, you know, with a softer rod or stuff like that, you know.
Well, what I would say is it's not an intimidating river. You know, this is what I you know, for anybody who's, you know, maybe not used to spring salmon and they might be a bit, you know, oh God, you know, is it big rods, big flies, big lines? We're looking at, it's a lovely little flow going downstream in front of us. Probably maybe, I don't know, a couple of rod lengths across anyway. Yeah. And, you know, the banks are manicured beautifully. There's, you know, you have space to cast, you know, to get in and wade. So it's, like I said, it's not an intimidating river, but We'll get into the history of the Slaney maybe later on, but it just fascinates me to think that we'll be stepping into such a famous river and fishing in hollowed footsteps of so many people.
You're fishing on the same river that the likes of Kingsmill Moor would have fished with previously. Now, did he fish down here? I'm not 100% sure of that.
We'll say yes.
That was further upstream. Exactly. But no, it's a very, very historic river. Even if you go back, like I was doing a little bit of prep before I came over last night, and I think it was 91 years ago in this very pool, we had, according to records anyway, there was a fish of about 41 pounds caught and landed in April 91 years ago. So will we emulate that today? I hope so. Or close. We'll take half.
I'll be back every week if that's the case, Peter. Well, look, let's go fishing, and we'll touch in again later in the day, see how we get on. Peter, I can't believe it. What are we?
10 minutes after fishing.
After fishing, a handful of casts. You said to me, "Come on, there's some rocks down here. We're going to cast down there." And I think we were chatting, and you were about to tell me some story about the Slaney, and then next minute,
tightened up.
And I was like, "What the hell? I've just caught
about a 9.5 pound fresh bar of Slaney silver." I'm
speechless. I'm absolutely speechless. Like, I came to the Slaney in hope, not expectation. I actually can't remember the last time I caught a springer. I'd say it was pre-COVID. We're standing here in April. I'm on the historic Slaney and caught an absolute beautiful silver 9.5 pound. And Peter, fair play to you. You made it happen.
Well, no, look, it was a bit of it was certainly interesting when the line started shooting off in the other direction anyway, to say the least.
I think we were both taken by surprise, weren't we?
I was expecting you to hook them a little bit further down, I'll be honest now. They're not normally this time of year, they're a bit further down in the pool, not up at the very headwaters, you might say. But just to see that line shoot off and see the splashing and the acrobatics and everything, it's absolutely fantastic.
And it was a great fighting.
And it's actually the first fish in the record book landed for Ballycarney Fisheries for this year, so congratulations, Daire, well done.
Is there a trophy or a money gift, or what is there?
Not at this moment anyway, but I'd say there's a man that's going to be looking for membership for the next few years.
Yes, I will be here. What date is today? Today is the 14th of April.
14th, 15th of April,
yeah,
something like that.
So this will be my new day for spring fishing on the site. My God, I'm speechless. I'm shocked. I'm so happy.
It was a wonderful thing to see. It was a wonderful thing to be part of, and I don't know about yourself, Daire, with the fun of playing the fish, but I had as much fun running around the river trying to land the blooming thing.
Fair play to you.
The bit of excitement with it was absolutely fantastic.
Do you need to dry off?
Well, sure, look, that's part and parcel of the whole thing. Look, the fish are already wet, so we're wet anyway, so we're wet with success.
Yeah, wet with success. Here we are, Ballycarney Fishery, first springer of the season landed 2025 by myself. I'm completely shocked.
Podcast exclusive.
We nearly did it live, almost live. I'm just shocked. My first springer on the Slaney, and thank you very much, Peter.
No bother, Daire, no bother.
The morning session's just finished. We're probably going to head off for a bit of lunch. Rain's coming down a bit more. Conditions are cold. We had another go down the run there, nothing doing. Probably the tide, the high tide, has a lot to do with it. So tell me about what, the kind of theory around that now.
Yeah, so this is a theory that has kind of developed over the last few years since I took over the fishery here as a manager. We have found that in a lot of our beats, all of the 4 beats, that the best period for salmon fishing seems to be, I don't know whether it's a high water or a low water thing, but the best of the fishing seems to be somewhat in or around an hour before the high tide, just at the tidal limit down in the town of Enniscorthy. For whatever reason, whether it's fish running ahead of the push of the tide, don't know, but just going back on records, going back at times where fish were caught, it's in or around that period. Just they run ahead of the tide, or that seems to be the high point for when they start to take. Now, whether that's fresh fish coming in off the tide, or whether those fresh fish have gone through and they're stirring up what residents are there, they kind of act somewhat like decoys almost, that bring the more jaded resident fish onto the take, like a bit like what happened this morning, Daire. Like,
well, in fairness to you, because you said to me, Daire, how early can you get? And I was like, well, I'm not hitting the road at 5, but I'll hit the road at 7. But like, earlier would have been better, obviously. But you were saying to me, tide was at, I think,
something like 8 o'clock, I think, or something. So the best time for fishing here would have been 7 now, or slightly later. We still had success. But my theory on that is that possibly, now when I say a run of fish, it might only be 1 or 2 fish on each tide, maybe 3. I'm not trying to make it out like they're absolutely shoals in their thousands. It's not. That's catch returns and everything doesn't reflect that. But I do think that something went through this pool this morning that possibly stirred up that resident fish, because otherwise I don't think there would have been any reason really, because conditions were so dour and so against it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but what I like about it as well, though, is it gives you something to kind of hang your hat on. You kind of go, you can kind of target and go, all right, high tides at this, let's try for the hour or two around that, and then maybe rest it and try something else.
Well, exactly. That's what we found over the last while, that it's better to try and give it a good hour's fishing or a good hour and a half fishing, rather than fishing it hard for the day and flogging it, because you get despondent as well, flogging dead water as well, so it's easier to, I suppose, narrow your focus for that little while. Even we'd encourage down here, like, give it that prime time hour of whatever, do their little bit of salmon fishing there, then look, there's beautiful flats here, there's a beautiful little bit of streamy water as well. Why not bring the trout rod, do a bit of upstream nymph and euro nymph and a bit of dry fly, something like that. Use the beat. Like, it's not all entirely about salmon either. Split it up between your salmon and trout if you want to make a day's fishing out of it. Otherwise, you can just do your morning session or do whichever and kind of go away from it and come back.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that with myself, just with my salmon fishing. I'll do, a couple of hours, take a step back, cup of tea, walk around, come back, then maybe try another beat. As we're talking, here's a couple of swans heading upstream for us as well. They might stir up some of the fish, maybe, you never know. But
we're very lucky as well with the wildlife we have here as well. We do have a good, decent population of swans. They can be seen all across the river. The likes of your dippers, the occasional kingfisher as well, actually, which they're one of my favourite birds to see on the river as well. I absolutely love seeing a kingfisher coming up and down the river. Just seeing that flash of blue is absolutely lovely. And that's where my love of, I'm sure Daire will get into this a bit later on, but my love of blue flies comes from the kingfisher's blue, actually.
Actually, should we mention the fly that we caught the springer on this morning?
Not just yet. Not just yet.
Okay, we'll hold our fire on that. Tell us about...
It's unnamed, that's why.
The Peter special. We call it the podcast special maybe at this stage. Tell us, Peter, it's amazing actually. We're off the N80, but you cross a field and you could be anywhere. It's so peaceful. What I love about it, I said it earlier, is the banks are well maintained. It's easy access. It's easy to fish and to be casting. So how long have you been fishery manager here in the Ballycarney Fishery?
I have been fishery manager here for this is my 4th year doing it now. Basically, what used to happen with the system here was you joined for the year, you paid your yearly membership, you got, like a lot of the private fisheries on the Slaney, you got 1 day for the entire season. So you got, say, Daire, if you were coming along and you joined, you could get every Monday during the season, and that was your day to fish, whether you could make it or whether you couldn't, whether you had high water, low water. Kind of, actually, yeah. That's the best way to describe it almost. Whereas... during COVID, Michael Eustace passed away, and I was approached by Francis asking, how can we make a difference to the fishery, make it better for the fishermen? So I said, well, why couldn't we open it up to allow a little bit more free flow of traffic for fishermen, so to speak, that you're not restricted to just doing every 1 day a week or whatever. Like, it's the yearly subscription for here is €160, and in modern times I would consider that to be a lot of money for a bit of fishing. I know there's places in Ireland where you'd pay that fee just for a half day's fishing. But I'm a firm believer in lads getting value for their money. So basically what I'd started to do was, basically everyone books their beats through me. Okay. So it doesn't matter if you want to go once or twice in the season, once or twice in the year or a week, whichever. As much or as little as you want to do. It's up to you to kind of get your own value back out of it, you know what I mean? That's kind of what my philosophy on it anyway was. So... And
is it limited, the membership, to locals or...?
No, we're not limited. Like, we've quite a few international members, if you want to call it that as well. We've guys come over purely for the spring fishing, so to speak. Yeah.
But there are day tickets available as well.
Yeah, so through the rod catches and through the amount of statistics I have over the last couple of years, we decided that Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays are quiet enough on the fishery. Because a lot of the members in our syndicate organisation, whatever you want to call it, a lot of them are working men, working women, so they can only be available on Saturdays, Sundays, maybe the occasional Friday evening. So there's a gap there for Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Thursdays. If anyone happened to be free or had a day off work or something like that, we're opening it up. We've opened it up this year specifically for on the water.ie, and thanks to Andrew and Simon on that you don't really need to go through me to go, like, I don't have to meet people to take cash or anything off of them or Revolut or whatever. You can get your day ticket through them. I've put the maps of the fishery up for anyone that wants them when they get a ticket. And then basically I'll be able to text whoever wants to get their membership, or whoever wants, or not their membership, get their day ticket. If anyone wants to text me, or I'll text them, I should say, and give them their beats for the day.
And we've covered it before in terms of the Slaney, obviously its history as a historic spring river, and then the struggles it's had. Across the whole river, has there been any kind of glimmers of hope as a spring river?
Well, like every other year, there's been a few fish caught across the river in different places, you know, like from upstream up in Tullow, say, and Kildavin, and I think there's been a few in Cloham and Bunclody. You know, there's a few scattered across the board, but last year was considered to be absolutely abysmal, and I do think that a lot of the records from last year do reflect that as well, you know. It's not the fishery that it was in the 80s or way back. There are certainly... Is it devoid of salmon? No, they're not entirely gone. It's a very, very, very small percentage of what it used to be.
But there are salmon there, and I'm going to testify to that, because
there are salmon. It's not an empty river. Yeah. Like the way some people do go on, like they'd say that there's no salmon here at all, but yet to my knowledge there's probably about 10 maybe fish so far. People probably come back to me with that now, saying it's a lot higher or a lot lower. I'll get a lot of guff over that, but I think if you break it down ish, we're into the double digits ish as regards fish catches for the river in spring so far.
But I suppose it's like anywhere, if you're a fishery manager, you want to encourage the members, you want to encourage visiting anglers to come out and fish it. It becomes a catch-22 situation, really, in the sense of anglers don't hear the fish, they won't come out, nobody's fishing, it's less chance of catching. Whereas if we can actually encourage people to get out and see what's there, like this morning, as we've seen.
Well, exactly, yeah, look, if you spent your time waiting for the ideal conditions to come for you,
as I've learned,
you'll be waiting a long, long time. So sometimes you just have to, in no uncertain terms, make do with the hand that you're dealt, and go out and give it a go anyway. And just, I suppose, to put in the time as well. Like one of my biggest things is I would love to have a little bit more presence on this river of anglers, and it's purely from a protective perspective as well, that, you know, the more anglers that we have, they're keeping an eye on the banks. They're letting us know if there's any pollution issues. Like, I've had a few messages every now and again about certain, you know, the water's gone a fully colour because, you know, there's a little bit of discharge coming in through one of the tributaries or something like that, even though it's not terrible stuff. It was just, you know, there was a little bit of work done. It was silt more so than anything. It wasn't, you know, wasn't actually pollutant, so to speak. But to have anglers report that back, even to have that presence to know what's happening on the river, is good to know. And on top of that, not just from a pollution perspective, but having that presence on the river does deter poachers from coming down. Like, as I'm going to show you now in a while, Daire, we have evidence that there has been people poaching here, just as those two swans come flying in over our heads.
They can do all the poaching they like, but it's but like I've always said it, we're custodians of the river. I don't know, I'm trying to emphasise this point in terms of, yes, the numbers are down. It's spring fishing. It's a chance to get out. You know, the season, we're in April, you know, it's not too cold. It's just fantastic being out in the morning. I can't remember last time I caught a springer the last few years. I'm on the Slaney doing it. We took a chance today.
Well, that's it. It is a gamble at the end of the day. Like, it's 50-50, you're either going to catch or you won't. Do you know, at the end of the day, it is a 1 in 2 chance, and unfortunately, more often than not, it does go in one category more so than the other.
Yeah, and look, let's not you know, beat around the bush. It is harder now more than ever to catch a spring salmon. The numbers aren't there, but what I would say is it's been out. You know, you're away from the office, you're away from life, you're away from the stress, you're out in the river, you're out in nature, and you're casting the line out, you're watching your fly, and do you know what? There's also a chance you might actually catch a fish as well.
Well, that's it, connecting with just such a prize. Do you know, I suppose, what would you say, if it was dead easy, everyone would be doing it. Do you know, you do put in the hours, but you do have to work for your prize. But I do think that makes it all the more worth it.
And also, sea trout, we mentioned sea trout during the summer as well.
Yeah, so there does be, again, depending on the year, depending on conditions and stuff like that, but start of, because we're in the lower part of the Slaney, sort of the middle of June onwards is when we start to see the arrival of the sea trout coming in as well. So it can be quite productive. Now, it can be very hit and miss on years. I've heard people refer to it before as a feast or a famine. Sometimes it's absolutely loaded with fish, other times it's a scarce enough run. But we've been lucky enough on the East Coast over the last few years. We've been fairly decent. Now, last year aside wasn't majorly productive, but then look, there was high water in different places. It was it was a little bit unpredictable, I suppose, you know. With settled conditions, it very much favours the fishing, I think, you know.
Yeah, so like, you know, you've options there in the summer as well. I think we'll go off explore maybe some of the other stretches of the fishery. I'm off the mark for the season, so I'm happy. I'm going to hang up the rod now. I'm happy.
Amanda's converted now to his new favourite bee is my 80.
My 80, the springer on the Slaney. So thank you, Peter.
No bother, Darren.
So Peter, well, you can tell by the flowing of the water, we've changed. We've gone downstream on the fishery. So tell us where we are.
So this is the Ballycarney Bridge beach. So this is one of our, I suppose, well known for whichever reasons, and on our beat it's Ballycarney Fisheries, and of course one of our most predominant places is Ballycarney Bridge. So as you'll see towards the right bank there's one big massive, absolutely huge bit of white water going through there with a very strong flow. That's one of the main places where the salmon actually go through. So on the right morning you will see them running through there. But when it gets so low, it becomes too strong and they can't pass through it. So it becomes a little bit of a natural barrier, let's call it, where our fish can hang around a little bit. It makes them easier to catch, I suppose, to argument in places. It's a very unique situation because the current is in towards the right bank, looking downstream. It goes into the right bank, so you're standing in ankle depth of water, but there's actually quite a strong flow on it. But then, back in the 80s, a previous fishery manager put in a little bit of a rock arm or a croy, I suppose is what you call it, out over on the right bank. Now, it's still a little bit high here at the moment, but you might see there's a little bit of a fast water just down, there's a gorse bush down there on the right hand side. There's a little bit of a rock armour there. When you can see the top of that rock armour visibly, that's the time to be fishing here in Ballycarney Bridge, because at that point the fish can't get through.
Okay.
So it kind
at
of
the height we're looking at, they'll still get through.
Yeah, exactly. At the height right now, fish could still run through with the tide behind them, let's say. So it's a kind of a funny thing to describe, but standing at the bridge looking downstream, they come up the right bank, but then they kind of come up in a zigzag, for want of a better phrase. They come up on one side, they cross over to the other because of the flow of the water. So there's a singular tree there on the left hand side there sticking out ever so slightly. And some of our finest fish over the years have actually come from right there. So right between the croy and right in front of that tree there has been a very, very productive spot, I suppose would be.
What I'm looking at here as well is so on the left side, looking downstream, there's not much of there is a bit of a flow, but there's kind of different currents. Kind of the water's holding up, isn't it? Like I can just imagine the fish holding there just in the right height. It's a nice holding pool for them. Yeah,
and exactly. And as you've said there, Daire, there's the left side and there's the right side. Yeah. So if you could imagine, and I've seen this in low water, so I know what's down there. Yeah. But there's basically a gravel or a sandbar that runs nearly almost down straight through the middle of the river. So on either side you've got two deep holes. When the water actually gets low enough, now I wouldn't advise this too much because from a health and safety perspective, but when the water gets low enough, you can actually wade out to the middle of the river and you can actually cover both sides. You can cover the pool to your right and the pool to your left in subsequent casts. Brilliant. But from a health and safety perspective, I wouldn't encourage it too much.
Have your life jacket.
Yeah, have the life jacket with you and possibly a scuba diving kit. But no, the more productive side is the right bank. Don't get me wrong, there's some nice trout lie on this left side, but to get to it is quite tricky. You know.
How far downstream and upstream of the bridge have you as the Ballycarney Fishery?
So as the Ballycarney Fishery, we have the right bank. So we've 1, 2, 3. We basically have those 3 pools that you can see down there, and another about kilometre or 2 of that on the right side as well. Then on the left bank, still the right bank, I should say, upstream of the bridge. So it's still right bank because we're looking as the river faces downstream. So with the right bank, we have a good couple of kilometres up that way as well. However, the upper side of the bridge isn't as productive. It goes up into another beat that's called the Glass Door. Up at the top part of the Glass Door is more productive. It seems to be, it's very still flowing water on the upper side of Ballycarney Bridge. So it's very still, very dead water. You'd get fish passing through it, but very seldom would they stay there, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, just as we're looking upstream here, it's how calm and dead that water is, and then as soon as you turn downstream, the flow and
there's
the water.
Quite a contrast.
Yeah, and it's a lovely spot here, just even hearing the sound of the river, like it's just, I can see it's picturesque, I have to say.
Yeah, exactly. It's a wonderful place to be. Like what we spoke about above in my 80, just to be part of being part of that river, standing there, feeling that flow, feeling everything, just being at one with it. It's a very nice experience, even without catching a fish, you know.
Our thanks to Peter for joining us on the show. And don't forget to rate, review and follow the Ireland on the Fly podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Plus, you can keep up to date on IrelandOnTheFly.com as well as on Instagram, and myself and Tom will be back with another episode about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland.